Commander Vexstar stood in the center of his ship's command room and looked at the large screen in front of him. The Eternal Harmony was the biggest ship in the Zephyrian fleet, and it moved through space like a giant living creature. Its walls were made of something that looked like skin, and they pulsed with a soft blue light. The ship was alive in many ways, and Vexstar felt proud to command such a powerful vessel. The screen showed him reports about a new planet they had found. It was the third world around a yellow star, and the beings there called themselves humans. Vexstar read through the information with growing confidence. These humans had only learned to travel between stars in the last 100 years. Their ships were made of metal and used old technology that the Galactic Council had stopped using thousands of years ago. "Admiral Creelon wants to speak with you," said his communication officer. The officer was a tall being with silver skin and 4 arms. Like all members of the Zephyrian race, he could live for over 1,000 years and had served on many ships before this one. Vexstar touched a control and Admiral Creelon appeared on the screen. The Admiral was even older than Vexstar and had led more than 50 successful missions to bring new worlds into the Galactic Council. His face showed the calm confidence that came from never losing a battle. "Commander, are you ready to begin the standard approach?" Admiral Creelon asked. His voice was deep and carried the authority of someone who had conquered many worlds. "Yes, Admiral." The humans appear to be very primitive. Their weapons are basic and their ships are slow. This should be another easy victory for the Council. Vexstar replied. The Galactic Council had been growing for over 2,000 years. It started with just 3 races, but now included 12 different alien civilizations. Each time they found a new world with intelligent life, they offered the same choice: join the Council and accept their rule or be destroyed. Most species chose to join after seeing the power of the Council's fleets. Vexstar looked at his tactical officer, a being with green skin and large black eyes. "Show me their military strength," he ordered. The screen changed to show images of human warships. They were ugly metal boxes covered with strange weapons that fired solid projectiles instead of energy beams. The humans also used nuclear weapons, which the Council considered primitive and messy. Most Council races had moved beyond such crude tools long ago. Their largest ships are less than 2 kilometers long, the tactical officer reported. Our smallest escort vessels are bigger than their flagships. They have no energy shields, and their armor is just thick metal plates. Vexstar nodded. The Eternal Harmony was over 10 kilometers long and carried weapons that could destroy a planet if needed. The human ships looked like toys compared to the mighty vessels of the Council. Not far away from the alien fleet, Captain Jake Harrison stood on the bridge of the UES Discovery. His ship was much smaller than the alien vessel heading toward Earth, but it was fast and equipped with the best sensors humanity could build. Jake had been exploring the outer edge of the solar system when his instruments detected something unusual. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures approaching from the direction of Alpha Centauri," said Dr. Lisa Kane. She was the ship's science officer and one of the smartest people Jake had ever worked with. Her fingers moved quickly over her control panel as she tried to understand what they were seeing. "How massive?" Jake asked. He had been in space for 15 years and had never seen anything like the readings on his screen. "These aren't natural phenomena, Captain. Whatever is coming toward us, it's artificial, and it's huge. At least a dozen separate objects, each one bigger than anything we've ever built," Lisa replied. Jake felt his heart start beating faster. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now it seemed they were about to get there. "Answer." He turned to his communication officer, a young man named Tony Rodriguez. "Tony, send a priority message to Fleet Command. Tell them we have contact with unknown vessels of alien origin. Send all our sensor data and maintain communication." Silence until further orders. The message traveled at light speed toward Earth, where it arrived at the headquarters of the Combined Fleet Command. Admiral Roy Bennett was in his office reviewing patrol reports when the urgent message appeared on his screen. He read it twice before believing what he was seeing. Roy had spent 30 years in Earth's military. He had fought in the resource wars and had helped design humanity's first interstellar warships. He had always believed that if aliens existed, they might not be friendly. That belief had shaped how humanity built its military forces. "Get me General Patricia Hayes and Admiral Karen Foster," Roy ordered his aide. Within minutes, the three most senior military officers on Earth were in a secure video conference. "This is what we've been preparing for," Roy said as he shared Jake's message with the others. "If these aliens are coming to Earth, we need to assume they're not here for a friendly visit." General Hayes nodded. She commanded Earth's ground forces and had helped design the planetary defense systems. "How long do we have?" "Based on the Discovery's data, they'll reach Earth orbit in approximately 18 hours, Roy replied. Admiral Foster commanded the Space Navy. Her ships were spread throughout the solar system on patrol and training missions. "I can have the Third Fleet in Earth orbit in 12 hours. The Fifth Fleet can be there in 16 hours. That gives us most of our heavy units in position before they arrive." Meanwhile, Commander Vextar was reviewing the final preparations for the human conquest. His fleet consisted of 12 major warships and 30 smaller escort vessels. Each ship was a work of art, grown rather than built, with weapons that could disable enemy vessels without destroying them. The Council preferred to keep conquered worlds intact so they could be useful members of their civilization. "The humans have detected our approach," reported his sensor officer. "One of their small ships observed us from the edge of their star system." Vextar was not concerned. It was normal for primitive species to notice the Council fleet before it arrived. Fear often made them more willing to surrender without a fight. "Begin." Broadcasting the standard message in their primitive languages, Vextar ordered. The message was simple and had been used on hundreds of worlds before. It explained that the Galactic Council offered the humans a choice between peaceful submission or total destruction. Most species chose submission after seeing the size and power of the Council fleet. Back on Earth, Admiral Bennett worked frantically to prepare humanity's defenses. Earth's combined fleet was not as large as the approaching alien force, but it had been designed with one purpose in mind: to fight and win against any enemy that threatened humanity's home world. Captain Steve Rodriguez received his orders while his ship, the U.S. Defiant, was on patrol near Mars. The Defiant was one of humanity's newest battleships, armed with railguns that could fire projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. Steve had trained his crew for this moment for 3 years. "All hands, this is the captain," Steve announced over the ship's communication system. "We have received word that alien vessels are approaching Earth. This is not a drill. All departments report battle readiness in 30 minutes. Similar messages went out to every human warship in the solar system. Captain Nina Walsh commanded the carrier UES Liberty and began preparing her fighter squadrons for combat. Lieutenant Commander Amy Foster took her destroyer UES Ranger to join the main battle group forming near Earth. The aliens continued their approach, confident that the humans would surrender when they saw the overwhelming power of the Council fleet. They had conquered species far more advanced than these primitive beings who still used chemical rockets and metal projectiles. But humanity had spent 50 years preparing for this moment. Every ship, every weapon, every tactical doctrine had been designed with one assumption: that first contact might mean war. The aliens were about to discover that humans were unlike any species they had ever encountered before. The alien fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system like a collection of living sculptures. Each ship had smooth curves and flowing lines that made them look more like sea creatures than warships. The largest vessel, Commander Vextar S. Eternal Harmony, pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that ran along its hull like veins carrying glowing blood. Vextar studied the tactical display showing the positions of human ships. He counted 47 vessels of various sizes, arranged in defensive formations around Earth. The humans had responded faster than expected, but their numbers were still far smaller than his own fleet of over 60 ships. "Their formation is interesting," commented his tactical officer. "They've positioned their larger ships to protect their smaller ones, but they're not retreating. Most primitive species either flee or surrender immediately when they see our fleet." Admiral Creolon's voice came through the communication system. "Begin the demonstration. Fire warning shots at their outer picket ships. When they see our power, they'll realize resistance is futile." The alien weapons were marvels of biological engineering. Instead of crude explosives or kinetic projectiles, they fired concentrated beams of energy that could disable enemy systems without destroying the ship completely. The Council had perfected these weapons over thousands of years of conquest, always preferring to capture rather than destroy. 3 escort vessels moved forward and targeted the human destroyer UES Ranger. Lieutenant Commander Amy Foster watched the alien ship's approach on her main screen. Her destroyer was much smaller than the alien vessels, but she had no intention of backing down. "All stations, prepare for combat," Amy ordered. Her crew had trained for this moment, but none of them had ever faced alien technology before. They could only hope that their weapons would be effective against these strange bioships. The aliens fired first. Beams of purple energy struck the Ranger's hull, and Amy felt her ship shake as the energy tried to penetrate their armor. Sparks flew from several control panels, but the ship remained operational. "Damage report," Amy called out. "Minor systems damage to decks 3 and 7. No hull breaches. Main power is still at 90%, her chief engineer reported. Amy was surprised. The alien weapons had looked impressive, but they hadn't done as much damage as expected. She wondered if the aliens were holding back, or if their weapons were designed differently than human ones. On the Eternal Harmony, Commander Vextar frowned at the reports from his escort ships. The human vessel should have been disabled by the energy beams, but it was still moving and appeared to be preparing to return fire. "Increase power to the disabling beams," Vextar ordered. "Perhaps their primitive systems require more energy to shut down." But before his ships could fire again, the human destroyer launched its counterattack. The Ranger's main gun was a railgun that used magnetic fields to accelerate projectiles to incredible speeds. Amy had loaded it with a depleted uranium penetrator. Designed to punch through heavy armor, the projectile left the Ranger's gun at 20% of light speed. It crossed the distance between the ships in seconds and struck one of the alien escort vessels amidships. The bioship's living hull, designed to absorb energy weapons, offered no protection against the kinetic impact. The penetrator tore completely through the ship, leaving a hole 3 meters wide. The alien vessel began to bleed phosphorescent fluid into space as its organic systems went into shock. Emergency lights flickered along its hull as the ship's biological functions struggled to cope with the massive trauma. "Impossible," whispered Vextar's tactical officer. "No primitive species has ever damaged one of our ships." Admiral Bennett watched the battle unfold from his command center on the orbital fortress New Geneva. The massive station hung in Earth's orbit like a metal moon, bristling with weapons and sensor arrays. Roy had spent years designing this facility to serve as humanity's final line of defense. "The alien weapons are primarily energy-based," reported Dr. Lisa Kane, who had been transferred from the Discovery to help analyze the alien technology. "They seem designed to disable rather than destroy." "Our armor is holding up better than expected." Roy nodded. This matched what humanity's military planners had hoped for. Human warships were built with multiple redundant systems and heavy armor, because they expected to face enemies who wanted to kill them. The alien approach of trying to disable rather than destroy gave humanity an unexpected advantage. Order all units to begin coordinated attacks on the alien escort vessels, Roy commanded. Let's see how they handle our full firepower. Captain. Steve Rodriguez received the attack order aboard his battleship UES Defiant. His ship was one of humanity's most powerful warships, armed with multiple railguns, missile launchers, and experimental plasma cannons. Steve had waited his entire career for a chance to test these weapons in real combat. Target the largest escort vessel, Steve ordered his weapons officer. Full broadside, all guns. The Defiant unleashed a devastating barrage. 6 railgun projectiles followed by a spread of nuclear-tipped missiles streaked toward the alien ship. The biovessel's energy shields, designed to deflect other energy weapons, proved useless against the kinetic and explosive attacks. The first railgun projectile punched through the ship's hull near the bow. The second and third hits opened massive wounds in the vessel's side. When the missiles detonated against the hull, the explosions tore the bioship apart from the inside out. The alien vessel broke into 3 pieces, each section trailing glowing fluid as its biological systems died. It was the first council ship to be completely destroyed by a primitive species in over 500 years. Commander Vexstar stared at the tactical display in shock. One of his escort vessels was crippled and leaking, while another had been completely destroyed. The humans were not only fighting back, but they were winning. All ships, emergency combat formation, Vexstar ordered. These humans are more dangerous than our intelligence suggested, but the surprises were just beginning. Captain Nenia Walsh launched her fighter squadrons from the carrier UES Liberty. Unlike the large alien bioships, the human fighters were small, fast, and extremely maneuverable. They swarmed around the alien vessels like angry insects, targeting weapon systems and sensor arrays with precision strikes. The aliens had never faced this type of attack before. Their ships were designed for formal fleet engagements between large vessels, not swarms of small fighters using hit-and-run tactics. The bioship's weapons were too slow to track the fast-moving human fighters effectively. Lieutenant Ryan Clark piloted one of the experimental stealth fighters. His ship was coated with materials that absorbed sensor beams and made it nearly invisible to alien detection systems. Ryan slipped through the alien formation undetected, looking for high-value targets. He found one in the form of a command vessel directing the alien attack. Ryan armed his ship's single nuclear warhead and dove toward the bioship. The aliens didn't detect him until he was less than a kilometer away, and by then it was too late. The nuclear explosion lit up space like a miniature sun. The alien command ship vanished in the blast, taking its crew and all its tactical coordination systems with it. Without central command, the remaining alien vessels began to lose formation and coordination. Admiral Creolon watched in growing horror as his supposedly invincible fleet was torn apart by primitive humans using crude weapons. The Council had conquered hundreds of worlds, but they had never faced an enemy like this. Most species either surrendered immediately or fought briefly before being overwhelmed. The humans showed no signs of giving up, and their weapons were proving devastatingly effective. Commander Vexstar, withdraw the fleet to long range, Creolon ordered. We need to reassess the situation. But the humans weren't content to let the aliens retreat safely. Major Ellen Scott led a boarding party from the assault ship UES Wolverine. Her team used captured alien shuttle craft to approach a damaged bioship that was falling behind the main fleet. Ellen and her Marines breached the alien hull using cutting charges and fought their way through the ship's organic corridors. The alien crew, who had never experienced close-quarters combat, offered only token resistance before surrendering. Within hours, Ellen's team had captured the entire vessel, along with its crew and all its technology. It was humanity's first glimpse inside an alien ship, and what they found would change everything they thought they knew about their new enemies. The aliens were not the invincible conquerors they pretended to be. Their ships were beautiful but fragile. Their weapons were designed to capture rather than kill, and their crews were unprepared for the brutal reality of war against an enemy that refused to surrender. As the alien fleet retreated beyond Earth's orbit, both sides began to understand that this first contact had gone very differently than anyone had expected. The Galactic Council had met their first real defeat, while humanity had announced their presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. The alien fleet regrouped at the edge of Earth's solar system, licking their wounds and trying to understand what had gone wrong. Commander Vextar stood in his damaged command center, watching repair crews work to seal the holes that human weapons had punched through his ship's living hull. The Eternal Harmony was bleeding bioluminescent fluid from dozens of wounds, and its organic systems were struggling to heal themselves. Admiral Creelon appeared on the communication screen, his face showing anger and confusion in equal measure. Behind him, Vextar could see the bridge of the Admiral's flagship, which had also taken significant damage during the brief battle. "Explain to me how a primitive species managed to destroy 4 of our ships and damage 12 others," Creelon demanded. His voice carried the fury of someone who had never experienced defeat before. Vextar chose his words carefully. "The humans fight differently than any species we've encountered. Their weapons are crude but effective, and they show no interest in preserving their own ships or lives. They're willing to trade losses to inflict damage on us." This concept was foreign to the Galactic Council. For thousands of years, warfare had been a formal affair with rules and limitations. Fleets would maneuver for position, exchange fire at long range, and the losing side would surrender when defeat became inevitable. The idea of fighting to the death was considered barbaric and wasteful. "Perhaps we underestimated their technological level," suggested the Admiral's tactical officer. "Their kinetic weapons are more effective than our analysis predicted." But Vextar shook his head. "It's not just their weapons, it's their attitude. They attacked our ships with small fighters, sent boarding parties against damaged vessels, and used nuclear weapons without hesitation. They fight like they have nothing to lose." Meanwhile, Admiral Bennick was coordinating humanity's next moves from his command center. The first battle had been a success, but Roy knew the aliens would be back with reinforcements. Earth needed to be ready for a longer conflict. "How many alien ships did we destroy or capture?" Roy asked his operations officer. 4 confirmed. Kills, plus the one that Major Scott's team captured. Several others were damaged and may not be combat effective, came the reply. "And our losses?" 3 destroyers heavily damaged. 1 fighter squadron took 50% casualties, and the Ranger needs major repairs. But all our ships are still operational. Roy felt a mixture of pride and concern. His forces had performed better than expected, but this was just the beginning. The aliens would learn from their mistakes and come back stronger. Captain Jake Harrison and Dr. Lisa Kane were aboard the captured alien vessel, working with Major Scott's Marines to understand the enemy technology. The bioship was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Its corridors were lined with what looked like muscle tissue, and the walls pulsed with a steady rhythm like a heartbeat. "The entire ship is alive," Lisa explained as she ran her scanner over the organic surfaces. "It's not just built to look biological. It actually is a living creature. The hull can repair itself. The weapons are grown rather than manufactured, and the ship seems to have some form of consciousness." Jake studied the alien control systems, which responded to touch and seemed to anticipate the user's intentions. How do we fight something like this? The same way we fight any enemy, replied Major Scott. We find their weaknesses and exploit them. These bioships may be advanced, but they're not invincible. Our weapons prove that. The captured alien crew was being held in the ship's own detention area. The aliens were a graceful species with silver skin and elongated limbs. They seemed genuinely shocked the humans had not only fought back, but had actually won the battle. Why do you resist? Asked the alien captain through a translation device that Lisa had managed to activate. The Galactic Council offers peace and prosperity. We do not wish to destroy your world. Jake studied the alien's face, trying to read emotions and features that were completely foreign to him. Because it's our world. We don't want to be ruled by anyone, no matter how peaceful you claim to be. The alien seemed confused by this response, but resistance is futile. The Council has thousands of ships and the resources of dozens of star systems. Your species cannot stand against such power. Maybe not, Jake admitted, but we're going to try anyway. Back on the human ships, Captain Steve Rodriguez was analyzing the battle data with his tactical team. The Defiant had performed well in the fight, but Steve knew they could do better. The alien shields are designed to stop energy weapons, Steve's weapons officer reported. Our kinetic rounds went right through them like they weren't even there. What about their whole armor? Steve asked. It's tough but vulnerable to sustained damage. The biomaterial can heal small wounds, but major trauma seems to overwhelm the healing systems. Steve nodded. This information would be vital for future battles. Prepare detailed reports for Fleet Command. Every ship needs to know how to fight these biovessels effectively. Similar analysis was taking place throughout the human fleet. Captain Nina Walsh was debriefing her fighter pilots, learning about the aliens' weaknesses and strengths from those who had faced them in close combat. Their point defense systems are slow, reported Lieutenant Clark, who had successfully destroyed the alien command ship. They're designed to intercept large targets, not small fighters. We can exploit that advantage. What about their fighter escorts? Nina asked. They don't have any. Every alien ship we encountered was at least frigate-sized. They don't seem to use small craft in combat roles. This was another major advantage for humanity. Human military doctrine had always emphasized the use of fighters and bombers to extend a fleet's reach and provide tactical flexibility. The aliens seemed to rely entirely on their large bioships, which made them vulnerable to swarm attacks. Commander Vextar was receiving similar reports from his own surviving crews, but the information was far less encouraging. The humans had superior weapons, better tactics, and most importantly, they possessed a fighting spirit that the Council had not encountered in centuries. We need reinforcements, Vextar told Admiral Creolon during their next conference. And we need to change our approach. These humans won't surrender just because we show them our fleet. Creolon was reluctant to admit that he needed help, but the evidence was clear. I'm requesting additional fleets from the hegemony. We'll also ask our allies to contribute ships. This human threat must be contained before it spreads to other systems. The Admiral's words carried an ominous implication. The Galactic Council was preparing for a much larger war, one that would test humanity's ability to defend not just Earth, but their entire species' right to exist as a free civilization. On Earth's surface, General Patricia Hayes was coordinating the planet's ground defenses. The orbital battle had gone well, but Patricia knew the aliens might try to land troops on Earth if they couldn't defeat the human fleet. How are the planetary shield generators? Patricia asked her chief engineer. All primary installations are operational. We can protect the major population centers from orbital bombardment, but we can't cover the entire planet. Patricia nodded grimly. If the aliens decided to use planet-killer weapons, There was only so much humanity could do to stop them. Their survival depended on keeping the enemy fleet away from Earth entirely. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Commander Amy Foster was overseeing repairs to her damaged destroyer. The Ranger had taken significant damage from alien energy weapons, but the ship's crew was working around the clock to get her back into fighting condition. "How long until we're combat ready?" Amy asked her chief engineer. 48 hours for basic systems, 72 for full combat capability, came the reply. Amy looked out at the stars, knowing that the aliens were out there somewhere, planning their next attack. The first battle had been a victory, but it was just the beginning of what promised to be a long and difficult war. The captured alien vessel was providing valuable intelligence, but it also revealed the true scale of what humanity was facing. The Galactic Council controlled dozens of star systems and commanded thousands of ships. Even if Earth could defeat this first attack, there would be others. But humanity had advantages that the aliens didn't understand. They had the will to fight, for their freedom, the ingenuity to adapt to new challenges, and the determination to never surrender. The galaxy was about to learn that humans were unlike any species the Council had ever encountered. News of the disaster at Earth spread through Galactic Council space like wildfire. On the Zephyrian homeworld, High Commander Zarthik paced in his crystalline council chamber, reading reports that seemed impossible to believe. A primitive species had not only resisted the Council's advance fleet, but had actually defeated it in open battle. 4 ships destroyed and 12 damaged by savages who barely know how to travel between stars. Zarthik muttered to his aide. How did this happen? The aide, a younger Zephyrian with bright silver markings on his face, consulted his data tablet nervously. Admiral Creolon reports that the humans use kinetic weapons exclusively. Our bio-armor was not designed to withstand such primitive attacks. Zarthik's 4 eyes narrowed in thought. The Galactic Council had spent thousands of years perfecting energy-based warfare. Their ships, weapons, and defensive systems were all optimized for fighting other energy-using civilizations. The idea that someone would still use kinetic projectiles was almost insulting. Summon the other council members, Zarthik ordered. We need a coordinated response to this threat. Within hours, representatives from all 12 council races were gathered in virtual conference. The meeting included the crystalline Veltari, the gaseous Nebulos, the insectoid Clictor, and 9 other species that had joined the council over the centuries. Each had contributed ships and resources to maintain galactic peace under council rule. The human situation has become a crisis, announced High Commander Zarthik. If word spreads that a primitive species defeated our fleet, other worlds might begin to think they can resist us as well. The Veltari representative, a being made of living crystal, who communicated through harmonic vibrations, resonated with concern. Our subject worlds had been peaceful for centuries. They accepted council rule because they believed resistance was impossible. If humans can fight us successfully, others might try. This was exactly what the council feared most. Their empire was built on the assumption that resistance was futile. Most species surrendered without fighting once they saw the size and power of council fleets. The few that did resist were quickly overwhelmed and served as examples to others. But humanity had broken that pattern. They had fought back effectively and won, proving that the council could be beaten. The psychological impact of this victory would ripple through the galaxy, potentially inspiring other species to seek their own independence. Captain Jake Harrison was working with Dr. Lisa Kane to establish better communication with their alien prisoners. The translation software had improved significantly, allowing for more complex conversations about politics, history, and the nature of the galactic civilization that Earth now faced. Your council has ruled for 2,000 years, Jake said to the alien captain they had captured. But that doesn't give you the right to rule us. The alien, who had given his name as Sub-Commander Velkin, seemed genuinely puzzled by human attitudes. But we bring peace, technology, and prosperity to primitive worlds. Why would you choose conflict over cooperation? Because cooperation implies choice, Dr. Kane interjected. What you're offering is submission, disguised as partnership. Velkan's silver features showed confusion. Choice leads to conflict. The Council eliminates conflict by providing unity and order. Surely this is preferable to the chaos of independent civilizations. Jake shook his head. Maybe for you, but not for us. Humans would rather die fighting than live as slaves, no matter how comfortable the slavery might be. This exchange revealed the fundamental philosophical difference between humanity and the Council. The aliens had chosen security and order over freedom and self-determination. They genuinely believed they were helping primitive species by forcing them to join their civilization. Meanwhile, Admiral Bennett was coordinating humanity's response to the expected alien reinforcements. Intelligence from the captured ship suggested that the Council would send much larger fleets to Earth, possibly including planet-killing weapons. We need to take the fight to them, Roy told his senior staff during a strategy meeting. If we wait for them to bring their full strength to Earth, we'll be overwhelmed. General Hayes nodded in agreement. Our analysis suggests they have supply bases in nearby star systems. If we can disrupt their logistics, it might delay their next attack. Captain Rodriguez volunteered his battleship for the first strike mission. The Defiant can reach their nearest base in 3 days. Give me a small task force, and we'll show them that humans can project power beyond our own system. Roy approved the mission, despite the risks involved. Humanity needed to demonstrate that they could fight the aliens on equal terms anywhere in local space, not just in Earth's orbit. The task force consisted of the Defiant, 2 destroyers, and a support vessel carrying extra ammunition and fuel. Captain Rodriguez led his small fleet through hyperspace toward the Kepler 442 system, where intelligence suggested the aliens had established a forward supply base. They arrived to find exactly what they had hoped for, a collection of alien bioships and support vessels clustered around a massive space station that looked like a giant flower made of metal and living tissue. The station was clearly a logistics hub, with cargo vessels coming and going regularly. All ships, prepare for attack, Rodriguez ordered. Target the supply ships first, and the station itself. The human task force struck without warning, launching missiles and railgun projectiles at the surprised alien vessels. The supply ships, designed for cargo rather than combat, were destroyed quickly. The space station's defenses were more formidable, but they were designed to repel energy attacks rather than kinetic weapons. Within 2 hours, the alien supply base was a wreck. Rodriguez had lost 1 destroyer to the station's defenses, but the psychological impact of the attack would be enormous. The aliens would realize that nowhere in their space was safe from human retaliation. News of the attack reached Council space quickly, adding to the growing panic among the leadership. High Commander Zarthik convened another emergency session with his fellow Council members. The humans have attacked one of our supply bases, he announced grimly. They destroyed 12 cargo vessels and the entire Kepler station. Our local logistics network has been severely disrupted. The insectoid clicked her representative, clicked its mandibles in agitation. These humans are more aggressive than any species we've encountered. They don't wait for us to attack them. They seek out our installations and destroy them. Perhaps we should reconsider our approach, suggested the Nebulos delegate, its gaseous form shimmering with uncertainty. If these humans are so determined to resist, maybe we should offer them genuine autonomy within the Council structure. But Zarthik rejected this suggestion immediately. If we make exceptions for the humans, every species in Council space will demand the same treatment. Our entire civilization will collapse into chaos and conflict. The Council faced a dilemma that they had never encountered before. They could not allow humanity to remain independent because it would inspire other species to seek freedom. But they were discovering that conquering Earth would be far more difficult and costly than they had ever imagined. Back in human space, Major Scott was leading teams through the captured alien vessel, learning everything they could about Council, technology, and society. What they discovered was both encouraging and terrifying. The good news is that they're not as advanced as they pretend to be, Ellen reported to Admiral Bennett. Their technology is sophisticated but specialized. They've optimized everything for fighting other energy-based civilizations. And the bad news? Roy asked. They have thousands of ships and the resources of dozens of star systems. Even if we can defeat their individual fleets, they can keep sending more until we're overwhelmed. This was the harsh reality that humanity faced. They had tactical advantages that made them effective in individual battles, but the strategic situation was daunting. The Council could afford to lose dozens of fleets, while humanity could not afford to lose even one, Dr. King had been analyzing the political structure of the Council and had made some interesting discoveries. Their empire is more fragile than it appears, she told Admiral Bennett. Many of the member species joined voluntarily, but some were conquered. If we can demonstrate that the Council can be beaten, some of their allies might reconsider their loyalty. This gave Roy an idea for a new strategy. Instead of just defending Earth, humanity could work to destabilize the Council from within. If they could inspire other species to seek independence, the Council's empire might collapse under its own weight. But first, they had to survive the next alien attack. Intelligence suggested that the Council was assembling a massive fleet, possibly including ships from all 12 member species. When that armada arrived at Earth, humanity would face the greatest test in their species' history. The stage was set for a battle that would determine not just Earth's fate, but the future of freedom and independence throughout the galaxy. 6 months after the first battle at Earth, the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The news of humanity's victory had spread to every corner of Council space, carried by traders, diplomats, and refugees who were amazed that someone had finally stood up to the Galactic Council's rule. On the world of Kepler Prime, a neutral trading station at the edge of Council space, representatives from multiple species gathered in secret meetings. The station's main conference room buzzed with excited conversations in dozens of different languages, as beings who had never dared to dream of freedom suddenly saw new possibilities. Admiral Bennett sat at the head of a large table, flanked by diplomat Susan Clark and xenobiologist Dr. Matt Turner. Across from them sat Sub-Commander Velkin, who had become humanity's primary liaison with the Council after his capture during the first battle. The alien's silver features showed a weariness that spoke of months spent trying to bridge the gap between two completely different worldviews. The Council is prepared to offer humanity a unique status within our civilization, Velkin said carefully. You would maintain local autonomy while accepting Council oversight of your interstellar activities. Susan shook her head firmly. That's not independence. That's just a more comfortable form of slavery. Humanity will never accept Council rule in any form. Dr. Turner leaned forward, his scientific mind focused on understanding the bigger picture. What we're really discussing here isn't just Earth's future, but the entire concept of how galactic civilization should be organized. The negotiations had been going on for weeks, with neither side able to find common ground. The Council could not accept the idea of a truly independent human civilization, while humanity refused to surrender their freedom under any circumstances. But the real changes were happening elsewhere in the galaxy. On a dozen different worlds, species that had been part of the Council for centuries were beginning to question their allegiance. The Altarians had withdrawn their ships from Council fleets, claiming they needed them for internal security. The Regalians had stopped paying their tribute, demanding representation in Council decisions that affected their worlds. Captain Nenia Walsh commanded a joint exploration mission that included both human and alien crew members. Her ship, the U.E.'s Horizon, was exploring uncharted regions beyond Council space, looking for other independent civilizations that might be willing to form alliances with humanity. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from an unknown source, reported her communication officer, Lieutenant Kevin Park. A message that appeared on their screen was from a species calling themselves the Andromedans. They were tall, graceful beings with blue skin and large eyes who had been hiding in the outer rim for over 1,000 years, avoiding contact with the Council. We have watched your conflict with the Galactic Council with great interest, Andromedan spokesman said. Your species shows the same spirit of independence that drove us to reject Council rule centuries ago. This was exactly what Nenia had hoped to find. The galaxy was full of species that had chosen isolation over submission, and many of them were now ready to consider forming a new kind of interstellar alliance based on cooperation rather than domination. Back on Earth, Captain Steve Rodriguez was overseeing the construction of humanity's new shipyards. The orbital facilities around Mars had been expanded dramatically, with new production lines capable of building warships specifically designed to fight Council bioships. How many vessels can we have ready by the end of the year? Admiral Bennett asked during his inspection tour of the facilities. 40 new ships, including 12 heavy battleships, Steve replied. We're also retrofitting our older vessels with improved weapons and armor based on what we learned from fighting the aliens. But humanity's most important victory wasn't military. It was psychological. The captured Council ship had been studied extensively, revealing weaknesses in their technology and doctrine that could be exploited. More importantly, the aliens' own crew had begun to question the righteousness of their cause. Sub-Commander Velkin had spent months in human custody, during which time he had experienced something completely foreign to Council civilization: genuine debate and discussion about political philosophy. The humans didn't try to brainwash him or force him to accept their beliefs. Instead, they engaged him in conversations that challenged his assumptions about the nature of government and freedom. I begin to understand why your species resists U.S. so fiercely, Velkin told Jake Harrison during one of their regular discussions. The Council offers peace and prosperity, but you offer something we had forgotten existed: the right to choose your own path. Jake nodded. That's all we've ever wanted. The right to make our own mistakes and find our own way forward. These conversations were having an impact beyond just one alien prisoner. Velkin had been allowed to communicate with other Council representatives, sharing his observations about human society and values. Some of them were beginning to question whether the Council's way was truly the best path for galactic civilization. General Patricia Hayes received reports from intelligence. Operatives who had infiltrated Council space using captured alien technology. What they found was a civilization in crisis, with member species beginning to demand greater autonomy and representation in Council decisions. 3 more species have declared independence from the Council, Patricia reported to the Combined. Chiefs of Staff, the Vegan Confederation, the Sirius Commonwealth, and the Procyon Alliance have all withdrawn from Council authority and established their own governments. This was the domino effect that the Council had feared most. Humanity's successful resistance had inspired other species to seek their own freedom, and the monolithic empire that had ruled the galaxy for 2,000 years was beginning to fracture. Hi. Commander Zarthik faced a crisis unlike any in Council history. His military advisors were telling him that defeating humanity would require a fleet so large that it would strip defenses from other systems, potentially triggering more rebellions. His political advisors were warning that the Council's legitimacy was being questioned throughout their territory. "Perhaps it is time to consider a new approach," suggested his chief advisor, an elderly Zephyrian who had served the Council for over 3 centuries. "The old ways of conquest and dominion may no longer be effective." But Zarthik was not ready to abandon 2,000 years of tradition. "We cannot show weakness now. If we negotiate with the humans, every species in the galaxy will think they can defy us." A final confrontation came not in the form of a massive space battle, but in a diplomatic conference on the neutral world of Kepler Prime. Representatives from humanity, the Council, and dozens of other species gathered to discuss the future of galactic civilization. Admiral Bennett led the human delegation, while High Commander Zarthik himself attended for the Council. The negotiations were tense and difficult, with both sides struggling to find common ground between their incompatible worldviews. "The Council offers stability and peace," Zarthik argued. "Without central authority, the galaxy will descend into chaos and warfare." "Central authority imposed by force isn't peace, it's oppression," Susan Clark replied. "True peace can only exist between free peoples who choose to cooperate." The breakthrough came when Dr. Turner proposed a radical new concept, a galactic federation based on voluntary membership and mutual cooperation rather than domination and submission. Each species would maintain complete sovereignty over their internal affairs while working together on issues of mutual concern. "You're describing anarchy," protested the Council representative from the Veltari Crystalline Empire. "No," corrected Captain Walsh, who had returned from her exploration mission with representatives from 6 previously unknown civilizations. "We're describing freedom." The negotiations continued for months, but gradually a new framework began to emerge. The old Galactic Council would be dissolved and replaced with a voluntary federation of independent worlds. Species could join or leave as they chose, and no one would be forced to accept the authority of others. Not everyone was happy with this arrangement. Several Council species chose to maintain their own smaller empires rather than join the new federation. But for the first time in galactic history, there would be a genuine alternative to the imperial model of civilization. The final ceremony took place on Earth itself, in the same orbital facility where Admiral Bennett had coordinated humanity's defense. Representatives from over 50 species signed the Terra Accords, establishing the Galactic Federation as a voluntary alliance of free worlds. Sub-Commander Velken, now serving as the Zephyrian ambassador to Earth, participated in the signing ceremony. His presence symbolized the transformation that had taken place, not just in galactic politics, but in the minds of individuals who had discovered that there was an alternative to the only system they had ever known. "This is just the beginning," Admiral Bennett said as he watched the various species representatives interact peacefully in the station's main hall. "We've shown that different civilizations can work together without one dominating the others."